Welcome to episode 20 of the Tailgate Sports Podcast. Wildcard weekend is over with. There were some pretty good games, some duds, but overall, I was happy with it. Moving on to the divisional round, there's some great matchups. The season's winding down. The Super Bowl is getting closer. I'm not going to lie, I'm already sad to miss the NFL. We're going to have a big break, but we'll still have a little bit of NBA for a while, and then UFC all year round. We'll still have plenty of content. We'll still talk about the NFL, all that. Starting off, we're going to talk about some wildcard reactions, takeaways. The Chargers lose. Justin Herbert is overrated. I started the season off by saying Justin Herbert is fringe top 10. I did not put him in the top 5s and top 8s as everybody else. I think he has his flaws, and yes, he hasn't had the most amazing supporting cast and the best coaches, but he has not had success in the playoffs, and that matters to me. In this season, he didn't have the worst supporting cast. He had a great coach. He goes there and he lays a dud, having 4 interceptions, completing less than half of his pass attempts, and he had a really bad game. Am I going to say he's completely fallen off? He's not a good quarterback. I'm not going to say that, but I do think that people need to start putting him in those conversations until we see some postseason success, because that's what the NFL is about, is winning. I do think they still have hope. They could make a couple moves going into next year. You know, this season, I know he had a really bad game. That's what people are going to talk about in this Chargers team right now. But no one expected this Chargers team to go out and be a Super Bowl contender this year. And I think they came in and they had a great year, showing a lot of promise. You have a promising young wide receiver. Your defense looks really good. You have a new coach. They have promise on this team. And if they go out, they get another weapon to pair aside Ladd McConkey, and they maybe get another couple pieces for the offensive line and the defense. This is still a great team. I'm not going to give up on them. I think they showed a lot of promise this year. The Ravens beat the Steelers 28-14, and coming to this game, I picked the Steelers, but the Ravens absolutely dominated the Steelers on the ground. Derrick Henry had 180 yards on the ground. Lamar Jackson had 80 yards on the ground. And this Steelers team knew that the Ravens were going to run the ball, and they just could not stop them. Having a phenomenal rush defense, and they still could not do anything. This dynamic is going to be a problem in the playoffs. And I know that the Steelers, did not have a great performance, but the Ravens played amazing. The coaching, everything about this team was great. The Steelers, it's the same old stuff every single year. You go to the playoffs and you lose in the first round. I know Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season as a Steelers coach, but at what point is that just not enough? I think, yeah, if you're, a fan who has had those big droughts like that, I think it is tough to, move off of a coach who's winning. But at the same time, this is a team who has Super Bowls, who has that winning culture, and they're just content with going and losing in the first round every year. It's starting to create issues in the locker room. I think there's a clear-cut problem here. I think they need to blow it up a little bit and make a big move. Maybe move off of Mike Tomlin, and if that's not it, go out and make a drastic move for the offense. I know they made a couple moves for quarterbacks with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but go out, get another wide receiver one, get a guy that could be paired up with George Pickens if he stays, because I know George Pickens was saying some crazy stuff after the game. But they need to make a drastic move if they want to keep the fans in it and if they really want to turn things around. The Bills blow out the Broncos, and I'm not going to lie, as a Bills fan, I was a little nervous after that first drive. And the Broncos scored a touchdown, but the Bills really outperformed the Broncos. And as a Broncos fan, I'm not too upset. You showed a lot of promise here. You're young. You got your young quarterback and coach, and they showed a lot of promise. They had a good defense this year. You go out, get a running back, get a wide receiver, and the Broncos could have a good season next year, turn a lot of things around. They showed a lot of hope. The Bills absolutely dominated this game, and a lot of people were saying it was going to be close. I know a lot of people were scared for the Broncos matchup. I was scared for the Broncos matchup, but they exceeded all my expectations. They go up against the Ravens next, and the Ravens just dominated the Steelers. They had rush defense, and the Bills don't have the best rush defense, so it's going to be a tough matchup next for sure. But being able to have this game where they kind of blow them out and they don't have to exert too much, I think that it's a good game for them to have going into a matchup against a juggernaut team like Baltimore. Jaden Daniels played great, beat the Buccaneers. He is the rookie of the year, 100%. He exceeded all expectations. People, had their doubts about him. He came in. He won 12 games with the Commanders. This guy's unbelievable. He's having a C.J. Stroud year from last year, but I think even better. He has the rushing upside. His passing is phenomenal. He won a playoff game, and I could honestly, he has a chance to go and beat the Eagles. I think they have the right moves. I think, the defense could be a little better, but they have Dan Quinn as a head coach. He's a great defensive head coach. I think that this team has, if you're a fan, you are ecstatic, super happy, even if they go and lose next week. You got your number one guy, but I really think this team is slept on, and I think it's even possible that they could beat the Eagles. And I know the Buccaneers lost, and I'm not going to hate on them too much for that because they had a lot of injuries this year. So Baker Mayfield exceeded everyone's expectations this year, played at an elite level, even despite the injuries. When Chris Godwin went out, when Mike Evans went out, he still performed at an elite level. The Buccaneers could go back to the playoffs and could get some wins, and I could see them being a Super Bowl contender. I just think they need to make a couple moves. The offense looks great, phenomenal, but they need to make some big moves on defense if this team really wants to compete. I think, if they get Chris Godwin back, they keep all their offensive pieces, this offense is good enough to compete at a high level, but they need to drastically change their defense a bit, bring in some key guys, and this could be a Super Bowl team. I am happy if I'm a Bucs fan. The injuries really just killed us. Jordan Love has to be taken out of these top 10 conversations. People were talking about primetime this, primetime that. He comes in first year, does all this. But then he comes in this year and he struggled. He really did. I know people will say injuries, but he played and he struggled. He struggled with turning the ball over, interceptions, and then he comes into this playoff game and had the same exact issues. I think, people were content with the wide receiver room because they had so many guys that could perform. I think they need to bring in a number one. Jordan Love needs a number one. He is not that guy who could just carry this offense right now. He's still young. I'm not saying he can never be that, but right now you need to bring in another number one guy. The Rams dominated the Vikings, and this really hurts Sam Darnold's, chances to stay there, figure things out. I do think that the Vikings will probably move off of him now. It's unfortunate because I think they should keep him. I think that they should franchise tag him, keep him for the year. If he struggles again, then move off of him. J.J. McCarthy's very, very young, and, he's still coming off that injury. So I still would try to keep him, but I'd understand moving off of him now. The two biggest games of the year, despite having 14 wins, and I know that was phenomenal, but the two biggest games, and, he had some issues. I think the whole team had some issues, but Sam Darnold played a big role in that. I do think that they should keep him. 14 games is not a fluke. I stand on that. I believe Sam Darnold is a great quarterback and will have another great season next year, but I do understand the Vikings' problems. But the Rams are a scary team in the playoffs right now. I think they have the criteria and the assets to be any team alive right now. I think the defense has been phenomenal lately. Their defensive line has been top 5. The offense is a top 5 offense. They have wide receivers, running back, offensive line, quarterback. They have everything it takes, and they have been to a Super Bowl. Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, they have been there. They know what it takes to win. If I'm matching up against the Rams, I'm scared if I'm in the NFC right now. This team looks great, and this team could make a push. That's all the takeaways for the wild card weekend. We're going to get into our picks. I just got to pull that up. So sorry. Okay. NFL divisional round picks. Starting off with the Texans and the Chiefs. It's the Chiefs in the playoffs. I can't pick against them. Give me the Chiefs here. The Commanders and the Lions. I think it's going to be sneaky close. I think a lot of people think the Lions are going to come in and dominate. But the Commanders showed me something in the last game. But I'm going to go with the Lions, but it's going to be close. Rams and Eagles. I'm not going to lie. I've been saying the Eagles are so complete, but I'd be scared to go up against this Rams team. They've done it before. They've won the Super Bowl within the last 5 years. This team could really do it. And honestly, I think I'm going to pick the Rams here. Next, we got the Ravens and the Bills. This is by far the best matchup of the week. The Ravens just carved up the... Sorry, I'm going to redo that. The Ravens and the Bills, this is the best matchup of the week by far. The Ravens just carved up the Steelers' defense on the ground, and they are a much better run defense than the Bills. But I think the Bills, they got it. I think they have that juice. They beat them in the playoffs before. I'm going with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I think that Josh Allen's going to show he is the MVP. That's it for this episode. Those are all our picks and our breakaways and takeaways and reactions. Tune in next week for episode 21.